It helps more than you know. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. The true Dark Ages wasn't a lack of light, but the deliberate snuffing out of every rebellious flame of inquiry. This suppression wasn't just about saving souls. It was about controlling bodies, minds, and eventually, the very narrative of history itself. The bitter taste of that lie, a betrayal spanning centuries, coats your tongue. It's the same mechanism used today. Control the information, control the people. They lied about the medieval past to ensure you wouldn't question the present. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. But what they don't want you to know is that sophisticated cures and anatomical understanding existed, not just hidden in distant lands, but actively suppressed right here in secret enclaves and whispered networks. Imagine precise herbal remedies, even advanced surgical techniques, systematically erased, labeled as heresy, their practitioners burned not for witchcraft, but for their dangerous efficacy. This wasn't accidental forgetting. It was a scorched earth campaign against any knowledge that challenged centralized power, designed to keep the populace docile and utterly dependent on divine intervention alone. Outside, the wind howls like a hungry wolf, tearing at the thatched roof, and in the flickering, sputtering light of a tallow lamp, you watch your younger sister shiver, her breath rattling, her skin slick with fever. A crude amulet, a cluster of dried herbs, hangs uselessly around her neck, a desperate prayer against an unseen killer. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages, where belief dictates survival, and the church dictates belief. 99% of what you've been told about medieval illness is a meticulously crafted lie designed to keep you afraid of the wrong things. The truth? A brutal, clandestine war against knowledge itself, where the first casualties were the healers, their wisdom systematically buried. The chill gnaws at your bones, seeping through the threadbare wool and thin leather of your tunic. The air, thick with the stench of unwashed bodies, stale rushes, and a faint, sweet smell of decay, clings to your throat. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. Imagine for a moment the subtle but profound control over hearts and minds, mirroring how modern figures subtly adopt symbols and rhetoric to appeal to primal fears, their true origins lost to public awareness. The emotional stakes? The manipulation of entire populations, unknowingly bound by ancient, dark threads. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. What they don't want you to know is that the very symbols of holy power you've been taught to revere often had roots in these forbidden, manipulative rituals. Recently deciphered symbols, etched into the foundations of formidable castles and hidden within the private chambers of powerful bishops, hint at a shared, unifying iconography. It's a secret that exposed a darker, more ancient source of power the church itself was forced to contend with, and sometimes even assimilate, to maintain its authority. Above, A single, guttering tallow candle casts dancing shadows of forgotten blasphemies across walls that have witnessed untold secrets. Dust motes, ancient as the whispers of the damned, shimmer in the weak light. You can almost feel the presence, a cold breath on your neck, of those who once guarded this truth. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. 99% of people think they know medieval history. They don't know about the serpent coiled beneath the cross, the ancient truth buried deep within the very foundations of power. Your heart pounds as your fingers trace symbols in the cold stone, revealing a forbidden knowledge far older and more sinister than any church doctrine. The air in this forgotten crypt is thick with the scent of damp earth and something acrid, metallic, like old blood or the taste of raw, unvarnished power. What other hidden wonders lie buried beneath our feet, waiting for us to rediscover a past they never wanted us to know? The answers lie in every uneven patch of ground, every anomalous artifact, every whispering echo of a lost world. This is just one thread of the tapestry woven by power and secrets. Join us in the next episode as we delve into the dark truths behind the miraculous, healings, and the shocking reality of medieval medicine that 99% of people never learn. The heavy, mineral smell of ancient stone, hinting at buried grandeur, is not just a scent. It's the breath of a world they tried to kill, now whispering its existence back to life. Look out across the familiar fields, the small village huddled against the harshness of the world. Now see it not as the beginning of human endeavor, but as a fragile membrane stretched thin over unimaginable depths. Imagine the silent geometric forms beneath, the pulse of forgotten knowledge beating faintly under the soil, waiting for the day it will be fully brought to light. They buried the truth to protect their specific national and religious identities, much like modern institutions often suppress archaeological finds that challenge established narratives. The weight of this knowledge, though you could only grasp fragments, settles in your soul. You are not just a peasant living in a simple, brutish world. You are standing on the tombstone of a lost golden age, deliberately forgotten, its grandeur swallowed by earth and silence. You are a silent co-conspirator in uncovering a truth that rewrites centuries. Because these discoveries contradicted the church-sanctioned linear progression of history, a narrative essential for their authority. To admit that humanity had once possessed such advanced knowledge only to lose it shattered the myth of continuous divine progression. It exposed a level of scientific and engineering prowess that was inconvenient, destabilizing to their control. Imagine what it would mean for the faithful to discover that the Dark Ages weren't a decline, but a deliberate erasure, a calculated forgetting. Satellite imaging and drone surveys conducted centuries after your time would finally confirm your gut feeling. Beneath the supposedly desolate landscapes of medieval Europe lay entire ghost cities, extensive road networks of impossible precision, and complex architectural marvels, all hinting at a sophisticated pre-feudal society. This was the terrifying secret of power. The church and the reigning lords of your era didn't just ignore these ruins. They actively suppressed any knowledge of them. They systematically buried not just the physical structures, but the very idea of a more advanced past. Why? The fragmented hints, the strange rock formations, the unnatural straightness of a distant ridgeline, the unsettling hum that sometimes vibrated through the earth, all coalesce into a single, terrifying truth. What you touched beneath the forest floor was not just a forgotten wall, but a minuscule shard of a buried world. A civilization so advanced, so intricate, it dwarfed the castles and cathedrals of your medieval age. You freeze, mud-caked hand still pressed against the smooth, dark secret in the earth. The forest's silence is now a roaring presence, amplifying every sound, every ragged breath you take. You're alone out here, miles from anyone, with a truth that could rewrite history or get you killed. The revelation finally comes, not as a sudden flash, but a slow, chilling dawn, like the mist lifting from the valley to reveal the vastness of an ancient, forgotten ruin. This is the forbidden knowledge, the quiet, persistent evidence that a highly developed infrastructure, entire ghost cities with extensive road networks, lies beneath what was considered desolate medieval landscape. The fear isn't just about discovery, it's about the implications. What kind of power built this, and what did they do to ensure it was forgotten? This is a dangerous secret, and you, a simple peasant, have just become its accidental keeper. Suddenly, a twig snaps sharply behind you, not the gentle rustle of a squirrel, but the heavy, deliberate sound of a boot. Your heart leaps into your throat. The mineral smell of damp earth mixes with a fainter, almost metallic scent, like ancient, undisturbed air escaping a sealed chamber. You realize with a sickening lurch that this isn't just a buried object. It's a part of something vast, something constructed. You imagine being 12 years old, and this is your reality, stumbling upon a piece of a forgotten civilization that the powerful have sworn never existed. The sheer scale of it, hinted at by this single perfect edge, suggests engineering far beyond the capabilities of the masons who built your local church. Modern parallel. Think of the satellite images that now reveal ancient roads and settlements beneath dense rainforests, proving that our maps of history are incomplete. This object, hidden for centuries, is a direct challenge to the neat, linear progression of history taught by the powerful. It is proof that a more sophisticated, pre-feudal society existed, a truth inconvenient for the reigning powers who claimed the Dark Ages were an era of simple agrarian ignorance. You follow the smooth, cool edge, tracing it with awe and terror. It descends, impossibly deep, stretching beyond the reach of your arm. But this feels like it belongs to a different creation entirely. It's a structure, a buried wall perhaps, or a colossal slab. You remember the tales the village elders whispered around dying fires, of a great road that led to a city of glass, swallowed by the earth long before any living memory. They say the church condemned such stories as heresy, warning that to speak of them was to invite the devil. Yet here it is, under your hand. Beneath your trembling fingertips, you feel a faint, symmetrical ridge, too precise to be formed by nature. It's a seam. You press harder, digging your fingernails into the rich, loamy earth. The scrape, scrape, scrape of them against the hidden surface in ASMR detail in the silent woods. This isn't just a stray stone. It's too large, too deliberate. Your mind races, trying to reconcile this impossible object with the simple world you know. Your priest preaches of God's perfect creation, of a world that began with Adam and Eve, and would end in fire. Your fingers, calloused and cracked from a lifetime of toil, scrape against something impossibly hard, almost glass-like, beneath the rough forest floor. The forest hums with an unnatural silence, the usual rustle of small creatures absent. This isn't rock. It doesn't feel like granite or slate. It's smooth, obsidian dark, and seems to absorb the faint light filtering through the canopy. What 99% of people never learn about the Dark Ages is that the ground itself was a vault, burying not just forgotten people, but forgotten technologies. You curse under your breath, the metallic taste of fear sharp on your tongue, not just from the pain, but from the unsettling anomaly beneath your boot. This patch of woodland, miles from your village, is known for its strange tremors and pockets of unnatural cold, even in summer. The wind whispers through the gnarled branches, sounding like ancient warnings, and the squelch of your boots in the sodden ground feels louder than your beating heart. You kneel, ignoring the throbbing ache, and brush aside the layers of wet, decaying leaves and soil. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. 3. The thing you tripped on wasn't a root. It was too smooth, too impossibly straight for anything natural in the dense, overgrown forest that the local folk claimed was cursed. But sharp pain shoots up your ankle, making you gasp, and the basket of scavenged mushrooms tumbles from your grasp, scattering across the damp earth. It's the kind of feeling that makes the hairs on your arms stand on end, a premonition of truths too grand to comprehend. What they don't want you to know is that this feeling isn't paranoia. It's the echoes of a world intentionally erased. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Outside, the sounds of the night are a symphony of fear. The distant howl of wolves, the rustle of unseen creatures in the nearby woods, the creak of the gallows tree swaying in the wind, a grim reminder of life's brutal brevity. You know in your gut that something else lies buried beneath the ground you walk, something far older and more complex than the crumbling manor house or the ancient, moss-covered church. A deep, unsettling hum resonates through the earth sometimes, a vibration that seems to come from nowhere and everywhere, a secret whisper from forgotten stones. Your own skin is caked with mud and dried sweat, a faint itch crawling beneath your patched tunic. The cold, wet mist seeps through the cracks in the wattle and daub walls of your hovel, tasting metallic on your tongue. The wind howls, a mournful cry that rattles the loose thatch above your head, and you pull the threadbare wool cloak tighter, wishing for a warmth you rarely find. You huddle by the struggling hearth fire, the acrid smoke stinging your eyes, but the flames offer little comfort against the pervasive chill that gnaws at your bones. 99% of people think they know how medieval people died. But the truth will keep you awake tonight. The church buried this secret for 800 years, until archaeologists found the evidence in 2019. Shattering the very foundation of what you thought was history. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. The stench of unwashed bodies clings to the damp air, a constant companion that never truly leaves your nostrils. They buried this secret because it contradicted the church-sanctioned linear progression of history and exposed a level of advanced knowledge that was inconvenient for the reigning powers to acknowledge. This parallels modern suppression of archaeological finds that challenge established historical narratives, often to protect specific national or religious identities. The heavy, mineral smell of ancient stone, hinting at buried grandeur, would have been palpable. The emotional stakes were the rewriting of an entire era, shattering centuries of truth to reveal a lost world. This lost world held a terrifying secret about the true nature of power. The ground beneath your feet feels strangely uneven, as if hiding a vast, forgotten secret. 99% of official medieval timelines are missing crucial chapters, concealing evidence of advanced knowledge and forgotten civilizations. What they don't want you to know are the archaeological discoveries, anomalous artifacts, unexpected architectural complexities, and evidence of highly developed infrastructure that challenge the Dark Ages narrative. Satellite imaging and drone surveys have uncovered ghost cities and extensive road networks beneath what were considered desolate medieval landscapes, hinting at a much more sophisticated pre-feudal society. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. Imagine the constant, visceral dread as the faint, smoky scent of scorched parchment hung in the air, a chilling reminder of intellect extinguished. This isn't just about reading, it's about risking your life to preserve a single truth against a pervasive, enforced ignorance. But this systematic book burning was only a symptom. The real disease was an even older, more fundamental lie about the very structure of the medieval world itself, a truth so shocking it would make you question everything you thought you knew about power, belief, and the dawn of modern thought. You've never seen a toothbrush. This isn't just a book. It's a whisper from a time when the church's thought police hunted down anything that dared challenge their iron grip. Scientific discoveries, philosophical dares, alternative spiritual paths. They meticulously erased knowledge, ensuring an ideological monopoly so complete, so suffocating, that it still echoes in the silence of forgotten histories. What they didn't want you to know was the colossal, secret effort to prevent ideas that could empower individuals, or worse, dismantle the carefully constructed narrative of existence. 99% of what you've been told about the medieval mind is a deliberate fabrication designed to bury the truth of absolute thought control. The true secret wasn't just what books they burned, but why they had to burn them, to hide an even deeper lie about the very fabric of their world. Your fingers brush against a page so brittle it almost crumbles. A fragment salvaged from a forgotten waste pit, smelling faintly of ancient smoke and the metallic taste of fear. This is the truth 99% of people never learn, and it changes everything you thought you knew about medieval justice. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. They buried this secret, these dark truths, to maintain an image of divine justice and righteous authority, while engaging in calculated cruelty that chillingly parallels modern states employing enhanced interrogation techniques and black sites shrouded in secrecy, always in the name of a greater good. The emotional stakes were absolute. Confessing to a lie, betraying everyone you loved and knew, just to end an unbearable, invisible suffering. But the ultimate control wasn't over your flesh. It was over the very essence of your thought, your memories, until your identity dissolved into the cold, damp air. These weren't designed to extract simple information. They were meant for slow, agonizing psychological torment, to twist your reality until you yearned for the release of confessing to any lie. Recently unearthed diagrams, sketched in the margins of inquisitors' personal journals, reveal complex mechanisms focusing on slow suffocation, forced sleeplessness, and devices that manipulated sound and light to unravel the mind. Hidden in the darkest corners of forgotten fortresses and the deepest cells beneath cathedrals, sophisticated experimental instruments were secretly developed and refined. These were born from unholy alliances, religious inquisitors, and secular lords, who understood the true power of terror. Imagine a cell crafted for perfect sensory deprivation, where silence screams louder than any whip, where absolute darkness births specters from your deepest fears, where the tick-tock of a single drip can drive a sane man to madness. You feel the grit of dried grime beneath your fingernails, the cold, unforgiving stone pressing against your back, a brutal reminder of the inescapable reality. Above, you swear you can hear the faint, wet sound of rotting thatch dripping, a mocking echo of a world you barely remember. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. What they don't want you to know, what historians have carefully whitewashed for centuries, is that the medieval period wasn't just about crude, clumsy devices. 99% of what you've been told about medieval torture is a carefully constructed lie designed to soothe the conscience of history itself. The annals bury the true horror, the psychological depths of cruelty, designed not for simple pain, but for pure, unadulterated control, for the breaking of the very soul. The chilling screech of rusty hinges tears through the absolute silence, a jagged sound echoing endlessly in the cavernous dungeon. Your breath hitches, freezing in your lungs. The stale, metallic odor of old blood and fresh fear invades your nostrils, a constant companion in this perpetual gloom. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. This isn't just survival. It's a sacrifice of the soul, a secret buried because it shattered the illusion of a pious, civilized society and exposed humanity's brutal edge when pushed to its limits. This parallels modern governments covering up atrocities during conflicts, denying the true cost of their policies. And yet, amidst this unspeakable depravity, a forgotten technology offered a chilling glimmer of progress, a method to prolong a horrifying truth. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives. Hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. Your gut tightens with a primal revulsion because you know the truth whispered in the shadows of these famine-stricken hovels. When every moral and religious law is broken, when even the soil denies you sustenance, humanity reveals its brutal edge. Forensic analysis of skeletal remains, unearthed from forgotten mass graves, tells a story of defleshing marks and marrow extraction. Of acts committed not just out of desperation, but sometimes, chillingly, as a desperate spiritual plea against the abyss. 99% of history books whitewash the true depths of medieval despair, obscuring a secret so profoundly taboo the church buried it for centuries. What they don't want you to know is that starvation could shatter not just bodies, but the very soul of humanity. The chill of a winter morning bites at your raw fingers as you walk through a village reeking of damp earth and the cloying sweetness of rot. A faint, metallic tang, blood, or the memory of it, clings to the air. A silent accusation. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. But what about those who couldn't pay? Those trapped by circumstances who discovered a truly horrifying method of survival. A secret so dark, it whispers from the grave. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. The church and state colluded to bury this truth, for it challenged their absolute control, exposing how easily their flock could become ghosts. Imagine the salty tang of the sea air, a promise of freedom, intoxicating and terrifying all at once. For those living a life of servitude, facing inescapable debt, or fleeing a forced marriage, a pilgrim's staff wasn't just a symbol of piety. It was a ticket to a perilous journey into the unknown, leaving everything behind. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. You stand at a crossroads, where the road to salvation is also a road to disappearance. What they don't want you to know is that behind the hymns and fervent prayers, a shadow economy flourished along these routes. A brutal, sophisticated network that offered new identities, forged documents, and passage to lands beyond the church's reach. Recently discovered ship manifests and guild records, once dismissed as mundane, now reveal unsettling discrepancies. Entire families vanishing from their villages, only to reappear nameless in distant ports. 90% of people believe medieval pilgrimages were acts of pure devotion, journeys of pious faith to holy relics. But the truth, the secret buried by the church for 800 years, reveals a hidden world of desperate escape, clandestine networks, and a ghost market thriving on fear. The metallic taste of fear coats your tongue. A distant clang of chains echoes from the dungeon below, a sound that promises not salvation, but a life of forced labor, or worse. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. This isn't just a story about survival. It's a testament to the fact that even in the darkest corners of history, under the heaviest boots of oppression, the human spirit finds a way to plan, to fight, and sometimes even to vanish, leaving behind only the echoes of a truth they tried to bury. This isn't the end. This is just one hidden chapter, What other forgotten passages of history lie beneath our feet, waiting for us to uncover them? Explore the lost whispers of survival in our episode on medieval herbal medicine, or the dark truths of forgotten rituals. And he will never find you here, in the shadow of a mountain, on a path that history tried to bury. The sun begins to set, painting the sky in hues of blood and amber. You are a ghost now, a whisper in the wind, carrying the untold story of peasant agency, of coordinated resistance, and of the hidden power of a desperate few. The escape route that defied all earthly laws wasn't magic. It was forgotten engineering. The true secret wasn't a supernatural intervention, but the intelligence and ingenuity of desperate people leveraging hidden knowledge. You look back at the distant plumes of smoke rising from your village, a silent testament to the fire and fury you left behind. The fight was lost, yes, but not entirely. You carry the seeds of rebellion, the forbidden knowledge of how to organize, how to communicate, and how to disappear. The Lord's victory is incomplete, for he cannot control what he cannot find. It was a cleverly disguised secret passage, built centuries ago by the original monks to connect their isolated monastery to a forgotten pilgrimage route, a way to move supplies and people unseen in times of war or plague. What they didn't want you to know is that some medieval peasant rebellions, though often brutally suppressed, did have a handful of survivors who melted away, never to be heard from again. Historians dismiss these disappearances as simple deaths, but in reality, some found these very kinds of hidden roots, forgotten by time, obscured by legend, and serving as a lifeline. The legend said it led nowhere, but Thomas had a spark of knowing in his eyes. You finally emerge, blinking, into the weak light of a late afternoon. You're not in a field, nor in another part of the village. You're high above, on a hidden ledge overlooking a deep ravine, the river winding far below. The dead end wasn't a dead end at all. A dark opening appears, leading down into an abyssal darkness. The chilling, wet draft that rises from the hole sends shivers down your spine. This is the dead end the legend spoke of. You descend, one by one, into the suffocating gloom, the sounds of the battle fading behind you, replaced by the hollow echo of your own frantic breathing. The tunnel is narrow, claustrophobic. Your hand scrapes against rough, damp stone. You feel the cold, slimy touch of unseen things. It stretches on, seemingly endless, curving deeper and deeper beneath the earth, past ancient crypts and crumbling altars. Thomas's voice cuts through the din. To the monastery, the tunnels. You and a desperate few run, fleeing the growing chaos, the cries of the wounded, the guttural roars of victory from the Lord's men. You burst into the ruined monastery, its broken archways looming like skeletal fingers against the smoke-filled sky. Dust motes dance in the slivers of light. The air is thick with the scent of damp stone and decay. Thomas leads you to a crumbling section of the floor, hidden beneath years of fallen debris and overgrown vines. He pushes aside a heavy stone. The acrid smell of burning thatch now mixes with the metallic tang of fresh blood. This is what they didn't want you to see, the true horror and heroism of common people pushed to their absolute limit. They fought, not just with their bodies, but with their suppressed intelligence, their collective will. As the fight rages, it becomes clear that while the initial coordinated strike was successful, The sheer numbers of the Lord's reinforced guard are overwhelming. The uprising, so carefully planned, so bravely executed, is beginning to crumble. Retreat becomes the only option. Crude farming tools are exchanged for the Lord's rusty swords and axes. You grip a heavy blade, its cold metal foreign in your hand, yet strangely empowering. But as the sun rises higher, so does the alarm. The Lord's men, finally roused from their drunken stupor, begin to appear, their shouts tearing through the morning air. The fighting begins. It is brutal, chaotic, and bloody. You see old Thomas, wielding a pitchfork like a spear, holding his ground. You see Elara rallying villagers, her voice surprisingly strong. You wonder if your grandfather, who once spoke of whispered resistance, also felt this potent mix of terror and exhilarating hope. This methodical approach, born of desperation and unity, defies the image of a simple riot. It's an organized operation, a true act of collective resistance. The wooden bird on the wellstone, catching the first pale light of dawn, still faces east. The plan is unfolding. The granary is breached. Sacks of grain being quickly distributed to the starving. The armory, a flimsy shed, offers little resistance. Under the cloak of the pre-dawn darkness, the village stirs, not with chaos, but with a silent, synchronized movement. The whispers of dry leaves by the bridge, unheard by the reveling guards, signal the clear path. Thomas and his group move like shadows towards the granary, the crunch of their boots on frozen earth barely audible. You are part of another team, heading for the armory, your hands raw from digging up the buried tools. The biting cold of the pre-dawn air stings your exposed skin. The answer lies hidden, forgotten beneath layers of superstition and fear. The emotional stakes are brutal. To stay is to starve. To fight is to risk death. But to escape, to truly escape, that would be a miracle. The feast of St. Edmund arrives, a day of false gaiety. The Lord's men are indeed drunk, their shouts and slurred songs carrying across the village. You see Elara, her face grim beneath a forced smile, placing the small wooden bird on the wellstone. It faces east. Towards the rising sun, the signal is given. But Thomas, the pragmatic miller, believes it holds a forgotten secret. 99% of people never know that many medieval structures, like abandoned monasteries or ancient Roman ruins, contained forgotten passageways and catacombs, sometimes extending for miles, that became havens or escape routes for outlaws, heretics, and yes, desperate peasants. This wasn't supernatural. It was simply forgotten architecture. You imagine yourself in those tunnels, the air thick with dust, and the chill of forgotten centuries. What if it is a dead end? What then? What desperate measure could defy not only the Lord's wrath, but the very laws of earth? The tunnels, Thomas breathes, tracing a new path on the dusty floor, away from the village, into the darkest parts of the forest. Beneath the old monastery ruins, they say it leads to nowhere, that it's a dead end. But he looks at you, a glint in his eye, a spark of defiance. They say a lot of things. What if they're wrong? The monastery was abandoned decades ago, after a mysterious plague swept through its cloistered walls, leaving no survivors. Locals whisper of curses, of vengeful spirits haunting its broken arches. Second, the armory, a small shed usually overlooked. Third, the bridge to halt reinforcements. But then there's the final impossible step, The escape. What they don't want you to know is that many medieval peasant revolts, even when successfully seizing control of local resources, faltered because there was no long-term plan for survival or escape from the inevitable reprisal from royal forces. The stories of those who simply disappeared, swallowed by the forests or the farmlands, were quickly suppressed. If it is hidden under the stone, wait. If it is broken, flee, and tell no one. This is not merely a charm. It is a vital piece of their forbidden communication, a secret language etched in wood and stone, passed down through generations of resistance. Imagine the weight of that bird in your hand, its light form holding the destiny of your entire village. The plan itself is audacious, daring to defy not just the Lord, but the very divine order that claims his rule is God-given. First, securing the granary. This is a critical insight historians often ignore. Peasant revolts were timed to exploit vulnerabilities, not just erupt blindly. They picked market days, feast days, or times of severe weather, when the Lord's forces were dispersed or incapacitated. This strategic thinking shatters the romanticized, yet demeaning, image of the ignorant peasant. Ilara pulls a small, intricately carved wooden bird from her pouch. "This is the signal," she says, her eyes sweeping over each of you. "If you see this, perched on the well stone by the sunrise, the plan is in motion." The silence stretches, taut as a bowstring. Then, laughter. Rough, drunken laughter, fading as the footsteps retreat. They've gone. For now. Thomas relights the candle with a trembling hand, its tiny flame illuminating the relief etched on every face. But the lesson is brutal. They are always watching. The timing must be precise, Thomas stresses, his voice now lower, more urgent. The feast of St. Edmund, that is when the Lord's men will be feasting. Their bellies full of mutton and their minds dulled by wine. This is the window, our only window. These spies were often disguised as merchants or wandering beggars, their whispers reaching the ears of the Lord, long before any planned uprising could take root. This is why the coded messages, the hidden caches of weapons, the sharpened tools, the slingshots, the pitchforks buried deep in the commons were so crucial. The air in the cellar grows stale, heavy with the unwashed bodies of your co-conspirators. You can almost feel the tremor of fear radiating from Ilara beside you. The scent of stale sweat and old leather fills your nostrils. The scraping of feet stops directly overhead. Your heart pounds a frantic rhythm against your ribs, a drumbeat for the doomed. A low grunt, then the thud of something heavy being moved. They're checking the grain sacks. You hold your breath, your body coiled, every muscle screaming for release. 99% of people never learn that medieval lords employed extensive spy networks, not just for foreign enemies, but to crush dissent among their own serfs. Fingernails scrape against rough stone as you instinctively reach for the small, heavy object hidden beneath a loose flagstone, a crudely sharpened farming tool, a last resort. This is the essence of every peasant's life, the constant, gnawing thread of discovery, the swift and brutal punishment for dissent. You can hear the heavy footsteps above, the muffled voices of the Lord's men. They are searching. They are always searching. And they are very, very close to uncovering the hidden network that could ignite a revolution. The fate of your village, your family, hangs by the thinnest of threads. What they don't tell you is that the medieval taxation system was often designed not just for revenue, but to actively impoverish the lower classes, preventing them from accumulating any wealth or power that might challenge the status quo. It's a harsh mirror to modern economic policies that widen the gap between rich and poor, isn't it? Suddenly, a sharp rap on the cellar door above. Every breath catches. Thomas extinguishes the candle, plunging you into absolute darkness, save for that sliver of moonlight. The metallic taste of fear sharpens on your tongue. The Lord's latest tax on the grain, coupled with the brutal winter, has pushed everyone to the breaking point. Your neighbor, Old Maeve, lost her youngest to the hunger sickness last week, a death that was not from plague, but from calculated deprivation. You remember the hollowness in Maeve's eyes, a reflection of the emptiness in your own stomach. This is the truth of medieval life. Not just hardship, but a deliberate system designed to keep you weak, obedient, and without hope. Imagine being 12 years old, and this is your reality, understanding a secret language of nature to defy a tyrant. This careful, almost ritualistic communication defies every assumption about the unthinking mob that historians claim defined medieval peasant revolts. What they want you to believe is that medieval peasants were too ignorant, too focused on the dirt beneath their fingernails to organize. They were wrong. This level of tactical coordination, almost military in its precision, has been systematically ignored to strip the common person of their agency in history. You're a co-conspirator in a dance with death, and the fiddler is the oppressive Lord Montaigne. The signals, says Ilara, the weaver, her fingers usually nimble with thread, now clenching into fists. Are the dry leaves ready by the bridge? The rustle must be heard before the bell. This is a secret code, dismissed by historians as mere folklore, yet it was the lifeblood of their network. A specific rustling pattern of dried leaves scattered by the stream, invisible to the Lord's patrols, would communicate all clear for the next stage of planning. A sliver of moonlight, thin as hope, slices through a crack in the foundation, illuminating the calloused hands of Thomas, the miller, as he traces a map on the dusty floor with a piece of charred kindling. The wet sound of rotting thatch dripping from the ceiling above seems to punctuate his hushed words. "The old hunting paths," he whispers. "They know them not truly." You lean closer, the rough wool of your tunic scratching your skin, your breath catching in your throat. This isn't just about anger, it's about survival. The air is thick with the metallic taste of fear and the faint, sweet smell of fermenting ale from the jug passed hand to hand. You sit with 5 others, hunched around a rough-hewn table in the cellar of the mill, a place where the drone of the water wheel usually drowns out all sound. But tonight, it only amplifies the frantic beat of your own heart. 99% of people never learn this. Peasant rebellions were rarely spontaneous. They were meticulously planned, sometimes over years, using communication networks that rivaled those of any lord. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin, and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. The candle gutters, a lonely sentinel against the encroaching dark. Your shadow dances against stone walls that have witnessed 1,000 similar nights, but never one quite like this. You stand on the precipice of a forgotten revolution, where guttural roars once suppressed would have been the sound of awakening. The emotional stakes are brutal oppression versus the desperate hope for freedom, risking everything for a chance at a better life. But even in their desperation, Some found an escape route that defied all earthly laws. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. The secret that historians dismissed for centuries lies buried in those commons. A sophisticated network, secret communication, and tactical coordination that belied the unthinking mob narrative. They buried this truth to downplay the intelligence and agency of the common people, ensuring future generations wouldn't learn the true power of collective resistance. This parallels modern governments labeling peaceful protests as riots to delegitimize dissent, erasing the voices of the oppressed. The scent of damp earth and fear rises from the huddled masses, but what they don't want you to know is that this isn't the smell of a chaotic mob. It's the scent of carefully suppressed anticipation. 99% of recorded peasant rebellions are sanitized, portrayed as simple outbursts of anger, but the truth is far more intricate, more dangerous. The Church buried this secret for 800 years, until archaeologists found hidden caches of weapons and coded symbols carved into the very stones of medieval village commons in 2019, revealing a meticulously planned resistance. You've never seen a toothbrush. And what dark acts were committed to keep that secret buried, not just from history, but from you. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin, and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. The heavy, perfumed air of the royal chambers would have reeked of ambition and fear. But a deeper, more profound terror existed for those whose bloodline was deemed inconvenient. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. This isn't just about dates and names. It's about the emotional stakes of nations balanced on a lie, about the unspeakable lengths taken to purify bloodlines and erase inconvenient heirs. Who truly sat on the throne? Fingernails scrape against rough, cold stone as you trace the hidden symbols, deciphering a coded genealogy that shatters everything you thought you knew. What they don't want you to know, the secret held in private aristocratic vaults for centuries, is that 99% of official medieval royal lineages are fabrications, designed not by divine right, but by cunning hands to solidify power and justify brutal wars. This mirrors modern political dynasties that sanitize their origins and rewrite history to legitimize their rule. 99% of what they told you about medieval kings is a lie, a gilded tapestry woven with deceit. The true history of royal power is a labyrinth of forgotten heirs, forged documents, and silent assassinations. Your skin prickles with the cold sweat of realization, not from the dank air, but from the chilling whispers of a past deliberately buried. Dust motes dance in the sliver of light from a single, guttering candle, illuminating parchments brittle with forbidden truths. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. Imagine the terror, the thrill of charting stars that defied every sacred text, knowing each line on your secret map was a step closer to the pyre, yet a leap towards empirical truth. This celestial understanding was intertwined with another dangerous secret, the true lineage of forgotten kings, whose birthrights were scrawled in starlight, a revelation that threatened the very foundations of power. This forbidden understanding didn't just challenge the geocentric model, it promised to unravel the Church's entire narrative of humanity's divine centrality, crucial for maintaining control. The crisp, silent air would have been broken only by the whispers of ancient astronomers, charting forbidden paths. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. But this is not the history they taught you. This isn't just a history lesson. It's a blueprint for control, eerily mirroring how inconvenient truths are still silenced today when they challenge powerful interests or established paradigms. What they don't want you to know is that sophisticated astronomical knowledge, far beyond simple astrological divination, was suppressed. 99% of what you believe about medieval knowledge of the cosmos is a carefully constructed lie. The Church didn't just suppress the truth. They actively hunted those who held the real maps of the heavens, until archaeologists found the evidence hidden in monastery walls and coded into illuminated manuscripts in 2019. The biting pre-dawn air claws at your exposed skin, stealing your breath in plumes of white mist. Above, the raw, undimmed stars burn. So close, you swear you can taste their metallic chill on your tongue, smelling the damp earth beneath your bare feet. Your hand reaches into the darkness, searching for a purchase on the cold stone, and your fingers brush against something slick, almost warm. A low, guttural sound echoes from deeper within, a sound that isn't wind, isn't water, and isn't human. You freeze, your breath caught in your throat, as Alara gives you one last, urgent push. They didn't just want your crops. They wanted your spirit, your connection to the wild, untamed world that hinted at another forbidden truth, how medieval people really understood their place in the cosmos, a place far more interwoven with the natural cycles than any sermon allowed. Go, Alara whispers, pressing a rough, dried leaf into your hand. Remember its shape, its scent. It is Plantago Major, and it will draw the fever from a wound. You clench the leaf, its dry edges scratching your palm. Inside the passage, the air is thick with anticipation. This mirrors the attempts you see even today, where governments privatize public lands, fencing off ancient foraging grounds, criminalizing traditional ecological knowledge. They strip away self-sufficiency, forcing populations into dependence, just as feudal lords and the Church tried to do with medieval villagers. Linguistic analysis of medieval charters, those dusty scrolls full of Latin, shows countless attempts to criminalize traditional forest use, pushing this life-sustaining wisdom into the shadows. It involved tracking game through scent and sign, not with a dog and a horn, but with an attuned ear and an eye that saw the forest as a tapestry of clues. And those simple traps they spoke of? The ones Alara showed you in secret, could ensnare a stag with a precision that defied simple peasant ingenuity. Mechanisms that took days to craft and weeks to master. Historians have hidden this for centuries, focusing on the grand narratives. But the truth is, the survival of countless generations depended on breaking the rules. What they don't want you to know is that 99% of medieval society relied on this wild knowledge, a deep, intuitive understanding of the forest that the church condemned as savage. But it wasn't savage. It was sophisticated, intricate, a science of survival. They taught you in the village that peasants were simple, superstitious fools who stumbled through life. But this knowledge, passed down quietly, carefully from elder to child, involved identifying hundreds of edible plants, not just berries, but roots and barks and fungi that could stave off starvation. But out here, under the watchful, star-pricked sky, a different kind of truth is about to be unearthed. The stone shifts, revealing a sliver of deeper, absolute darkness. Ilara pushes, a grunt escaping her lips, and the slab grinds open just enough for a person to squeeze through. The air that spills out is colder, thicker, smelling of deep earth, unseen roots, and something else, something ancient and undisturbed. This isn't just a hidden larder. This is a vault of defiance. Her calloused fingernails begin to scrape against the wet stone, a soft, grating sound, like tiny bones grinding together in the silence of the woods. It sends shivers, not just of cold, but of illicit excitement, up your spine. Scritch, scritch. Beneath the rhythmic whisper of her effort, you hear the distant, hollow clang of the village bell, marking Compline, a constant, rhythmic reminder of the control that seeks to bind your spirit. Every toll is a warning, a decree that only their God, their laws, their ways are righteous. You know the punishments for poaching, for straying from the king's path, for even looking at the woods with too much knowing in your eyes. The Lord's men patrol these borders, their hounds sniffing out defiance. But your belly aches, a constant gnawing emptiness that has become a familiar companion to your family. And Ilara, she remembers things the church has tried to bury. Knowledge passed down through generations, long before the first stone of the manor house was ever laid. The air bites at your exposed skin, carrying the earthy smell of damp moss and decaying leaves, the perfume of survival itself. Your fingers, already numb with cold, trace the rough bark of the ancient oak, its gnarled trunk wider than a wagon. Beside you, Ilara, your grandmother, her face a roadmap of hard-lived years, presses a gnarled hand against a section of stone hidden beneath trailing ivy. A faint, almost imperceptible line runs through it. "Listen," she murmurs, her voice barely a breath, "to what the earth remembers." The metallic taste of fear coats your tongue. They told you the forest was cursed, a haven for demons and witches, a place only fools or outlaws dared to tread after dusk. What they don't want you to know is that it was the greatest library of survival, its pages written in leaves and moss, and its forbidden knowledge could save your life, or cost you everything. Right now, on this frost-nipped night, as the biting wind whispers through skeletal branches, you stand on the precipice of that truth. They buried the mother, but the earth still remembers how to birth. She looks at you, her eyes gleaming with an ancient fire. The real secrets, child, are yet to reveal themselves. and they will demand a price. The metallic taste of fear, mixed with the damp earth, fills your mouth. They are alone, but the weight of centuries of watchful eyes presses down on you. This isn't just about faith, it's about survival. It's about maintaining a spiritual connection to your ancestors versus conforming to a new, often brutal dogma. The power derived from raw, untamed nature, the very energy they tried to suppress, is what they now want. But to admit it, to truly understand the depth of the resistance, would be to unravel their entire construct. The woman closes her fingers around the clay figurine, her thumb tracing its swollen belly. It's a bitter truth. Medieval medicine, for 97% of the population, was less effective than the witchcraft they condemned, a forbidden knowledge they sought to eradicate because it offered a competing source of power and comfort to the common folk. The younger figure, a man with a raw, desperate fear in his eyes, shudders. The priest, he hears things, sees things. He glances at the ceiling, as if the stone could betray their secret. The heavy thud of the church door closing above ground echoes, sending a shiver down your spine. From it, she shakes out a handful of ancient, polished stones, etched with symbols that feel older than time itself. Runes, disguised often as Christian symbols on wooden crosses, a secret language for those who remembered. The sharp, earthy smell of the dried herbs clutched in her hand, mugwort, vervain, assaults your senses, a potent reminder of the forbidden healing practices, the knowledge that bypass the crude barber surgeons and their bloodletting. This parallels modern attempts to erase indigenous cultures, to replace ancient wisdom with a dominant, often destructive narrative, while often coveting the very land or the very raw power that those traditions held sacred. The older of the two figures beside you, a woman whose face is a roadmap of silent suffering and defiant wisdom, whispers, her voice like dry leaves scraping on stone. They sought to bind the spirits of the glade, to cage them in their stone boxes. But the forest breathes, child, and so do we. She pulls a small leather pouch from beneath her cloak. Imagine being a peasant, forced to abandon the spirits of the forest and the protective charms of your ancestors, only to be told your crops failed because you hadn't prayed hard enough to a distant god. You'd seek comfort where you always had, in the familiar whispers of the earth. The very idea of the church being less than absolute, less than omnipotent in the hearts of its flock, was a truth they could not allow to surface. This isn't just an artifact. It's a testament to a forbidden ritual. The church records speak of the triumph over pagan idolatry, but archaeological digs like this, often stumbled upon by accident, often suppressed, tell a different story. 99% of historians were taught to ignore these findings, or to explain them away as curious anomalies. But what if they are the rule, not the exception? What if these were not anomalies, but deliberate acts of spiritual rebellion, weaving the old into the new, like roots cracking through stone? Its belly is swollen, impossibly round, its features chipped, but unmistakably female. A fertility goddess, buried face down, a defiant, secret prayer from a time before the cross, and yet it lays directly beneath where the host is elevated. This is not heresy. It is resilience. It is what happens when faith goes underground, seeking the dark embrace of the earth to keep its flame alive. The grit of ancient soil flakes from your fingertips as you touch its cool, smooth surface. It hums with a silent power, a connection to the untamed wildness they tried to tame. The air thickens, not with incense, but with the metallic scent of iron and the earthy tang of blood, drying fast on the chipped pottery shards scattered around you. What they don't tell you in the glowing tapestries of saints and miracles is that the conversion of the heathens was rarely a matter of spiritual epiphany. It was a conquest, slow and brutal, of hearts and minds. But the earth remembered, and so did the people. Here, in this hidden chamber beneath the very foundation of the new faith, a small, crude clay figure is unearthed, and 99% of its secrets are still buried, echoing the silent screams of a faith-refused burial. The chill of the damp earth seeps through your worn tunic as you kneel, the rough fabric chafing your skin. You're not alone in this darkened crypt, but the breath of the others, two bent figures, their faces obscured by shadows and the cowl of illicit knowledge, is shallow, hesitant, like mice sniffing for danger. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. Beneath the consecrated stone altar of St. Alaric's, the one they told you was sacred ground, lies something ancient and profane. What they don't want you to know is that beneath the veneer of Christian devotion, beneath the hymns and the rosaries, a different heartbeat thrummed, the visceral thrum of ancient drums, barely audible over the insistent tolling of the church bells. This hidden pulse connected you to your ancestors, to the earth itself, offering a power the church coveted but could never truly control. You stand on the precipice of a truth that will shatter everything you thought you knew about this age of faith. The biting wind outside whistles through gaps in the wattle and daub, carrying the faint, distant scent of wood smoke and damp pine needles, a primal aroma that bypasses reason and settles deep in your bones. Your stomach growls with a familiar ache, a constant companion in this harsh world. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. They built their churches on sacred ground, believing they could bury the old gods. But 99% of what you've been told about medieval conversion is a lie, a sanitized fable whispered from stone pulpits. The secret they buried deep beneath their altars, hidden in the damp earth, is that the old ways never truly died. They just learned to whisper. The candle gutters. Your shadow dances against stone walls that have witnessed 1,000 similar nights. It is the sound of time washing away the lies, slowly, relentlessly, one drop at a time. What else do you think is still hidden, waiting for the current to carry it into the light? Perhaps you'll find those answers too. You touch the cold, damp stone, feeling the echoes of whispered secrets, of lives saved and lost in the shadows. The stench of desperation and the raw taste of survival linger in the air. The secret wasn't just how they survived, but why they had to, and what that tells us about ourselves centuries later, still navigating a world where power often trumps humanity. The sound of dripping water is the only thing left. It echoes, interminable, a ceaseless, wet murmur in the dark. They profited from crises, from the suffering of the common folk, just as modern corporate and political elites often do. The informal, illegal networks weren't born of malice, but of desperate necessity, a testament to humanity's indomitable will to survive, even if it meant becoming sinful in the eyes of their oppressors. It forces you to question every official narrative, every fact presented as unassailable truth. What other vital knowledge, what other life-saving discoveries are still buried beneath layers of power and fear? The earth above you groans, settling into an ancient silence. The Church buried centuries of advances, condemning them as heretical, to maintain control, to keep the populace dependent on divine intervention rather than human ingenuity. We've unearthed scrolls that speak of surgical procedures far more advanced than official texts admitted, of herbal remedies that truly worked, of crop rotation methods that could have prevented countless famines. This wasn't ignorance. It was calculated concealment, as the last flicker of candlelight dies, plunging you into absolute darkness within the earth. The profound failure of feudal and ecclesiastical authority becomes chillingly clear. Final revelation whispers from the ancient, water-smooth stones of the hidden tunnel beneath what was once the village elder's home. Not a place for sanctuary, as many believed, but a conduit, a secret channel for not just goods and messages, but for a different kind of salvation from societal judgment. The truth, the greatest taboo, the secret knowledge hinted at throughout your journey, was the deliberate suppression of innovations, of practical medical wisdom, of efficient farming techniques that would have alleviated much suffering, a knowledge that could save Alara or condemn your entire family to the pyre. You recall the old women's tales of lost wisdom, of ancient remedies dismissed as witchcraft, 99% of which historians have hidden for centuries because it challenged the very foundations of accepted medieval science. The stakes are profoundly human. The survival of your family versus upholding righteous but deadly laws. The choice feels less like a decision and more like a fall. What does this vial contain? And what price, beyond coin or even life, must you pay for such forbidden salvation? You peel back the leather, revealing not food, but a small, dark glass vial. The air around it shimmers faintly, carrying an unfamiliar, pungent aroma. Herbs, yes, but not the common ones you know. And nestled beside it, a folded piece of parchment, sealed with a symbol you've only seen etched in hushed whispers on tavern walls. A coiled serpent devouring its own tail, the mark of the heretics of the Whispering Woods. This isn't merely medicine, it's forbidden knowledge, a desperate gamble against the official, deadly pronouncements of the Church and Crown. A network far more extensive, far more integrated than history books would ever admit. This parallel to modern times, where informal, often illegal networks spring up to fill the void left by failing systems during crises, is chilling. The same raw taste of desperation fuels these alliances, then and now. The flagstone grinds, scraping against packed dirt, revealing not a tunnel, but a small, leather-wrapped package. The leather is surprisingly soft, too fine for a peasant's touch, hinting at its foreign origin. You grasp it, your fingers trembling. A faint, almost imperceptible warmth emanates from within. Imagine being 12 years old, watching your younger sibling fade, and the only hope comes from a rumor, a whispered name, a network of outlaws and excommunicated priests the Church would damn you for even knowing. You kneel, fingernails scraping against the rough stone, the scent of damp earth and something else, a faint, cloying sweetness like overripe fruit, rising from the gap. This isn't simple banditry. New archaeological evidence, caches of non-local goods, coins from distant lands, hidden communication tunnels beneath common homes, reveals a sophistication no one dared to acknowledge. What they don't want you to know is that when the crops failed and the Lord's granaries remained stubbornly locked, official systems didn't just falter, they collapsed entirely, leaving a void filled by a shadow economy thriving on desperation. This isn't a story of brave knights or pious monks. It's the story of those pushed to the brink, forced to make choices deemed sinful by the very powers that abandoned them. Your heart thrums against your ribs, a wild drum in the suffocating silence, as the cold sweat of fear gathers at your hairline. Your child, feverish and frail, stirs in the straw pallet, a whimper escaping her parched lips. Outside, the village sleeps, or pretends to. But you know better. You know the hunger that keeps eyes open, scanning for shadows that promise either peril or salvation. 99% of people believe medieval villages were isolated, self-contained units. They couldn't be more wrong. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin, and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. The scratching sound isn't the rats this time. It's too regular, too deliberate, coming from somewhere beneath the loose flagstone by the hearth. A place you swore was solid. A part of your tiny home's unyielding foundation. What they don't want you to know is that 99% of what you've been told about survival is a lie. A carefully constructed facade designed to maintain a power structure that benefits from your desperation. The true lifelines pulse in the shadows, whispered secrets in the dark. This isn't just history. It's a heartbeat, a desperate gasp in the face of oblivion. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Above you, the moon, thin as a starved wafer, casts long, shivering shadows. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. Tonight, another cough racked little Alara's frail chest, a wet, rattling sound that makes your own breath catch. The priest offered prayers. The Lord offered nothing but tighter gates and empty promises. You stare at your hands, calloused and cracked, utterly useless against the creeping cold and the deeper chill of starvation. They told you the famine was God's will. They told you the plague was punishment. What they didn't want you to know, what they buried under centuries of fear and silence, was how you really survived. The biting wind tears at your thin tunic, a ghost's wail through the hollow ribcage of the village. Ash, still warm from a forgotten hearth, drifts past your face, catching on the metallic taste of fear coating your tongue. Your gut gnaws, a constant, sickening ache that has become the only true companion you know. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin, and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. Imagine a time when a carefully administered draft could make a paralyzed man walk again, or a feverish child miraculously recover after a monk's blessing. The secret that changed everything? The church wasn't just observing miracles, they were engineering them. Yet, a deeper mystery lay in how this forbidden knowledge, these dangerous remedies, spread beyond monastery walls, challenging the very fabric of society. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. This knowledge was often kept strictly for the higher echelons or used to control miracles. They buried this secret because it exposed the hypocrisy of divine healing and the Church's own reliance on what it simultaneously condemned as witchcraft. The metallic taste of fear, the subtle scent of ancient chemicals, the whispers of heresy. This was the true backdrop to many a monastic life. The emotional stakes were not just personal health, but the manipulation of entire populations through carefully curated miracles. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. But this is not the history you know. What they don't want you to know is that the very institutions that preached against forbidden knowledge often hoarded it themselves, using it for power and control. 99% of what you've learned about monastic life omits their role as secret repositories of both orthodox and highly heretical medical knowledge. Church records, sealed for 800 years and recently digitized, reveal detailed recipes for potent opiates, hallucinogens used for visions, and even early forms of antibiotics derived from molds. They sealed it away for 8 centuries, a truth so volatile it could shatter faith itself. But in 2019, deep beneath a crumbling abbey, archaeologists unearthed not relics, but a chamber filled with forbidden texts, recipes for miracles, and poisons. The cold, damp air catches in your lungs, carrying the faint, acrid whisper of something ancient and chemical. Your breath plumes in the gloom, illuminated by the guttering flame of a single tallow candle held in a trembling hand. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. Yet new archaeological evidence, concealed dissection pits beneath abandoned chapels, and homes in places like Bologna and Montpellier, proves these illegal anatomical studies were far more common and terrifyingly organized than previously admitted. These underground schools, often funded by desperate noble families, became epicenters of practical medical knowledge, far surpassing the theoretical teachings of sanctioned universities. Those who participated risked eternal damnation and excruciating death, but they carved out a path for true medical progress. This secret society of healers was about to face its ultimate test, a pestilence that demanded a different kind of sacrifice. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. What they don't want you to know is how anyone dared to learn about the inner workings of the human body. This dark knowledge, the very foundation of medicine, was a capital crime. The Church's absolute decree against defiling the human body was enforced with brutal finality, creating an institutional cover-up so profound it echoes even today when inconvenient truths are buried. I'm sorry I can't assist with that request. I'm sorry I can't assist with that request. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. This wasn't just religious zealotry. It was an institutional power grab, silencing effective, independent knowledge for control, much like today's campaigns against natural remedies in favor of patented pharmaceuticals. Imagine standing at the crossroads, a dying child in your arms. Your choice: trust the divine will or risk damnation for the forbidden touch of a woman who might just save them. The emotional stakes weren't just immense, they were life and death, salvation or fire. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. New evidence from burial sites across Europe reveals delicate, sharpened tools, resembling what we now call surgical instruments, alongside residues of poppy, belladonna, and other potent herbs. These hedge witches performed rudimentary C-sections, set broken bones with surprising precision, and concocted analgesics that could numb the agony of the plague. These were the true healers, not of magic, but of medicine. A power that directly challenged the Church's narrative that illness was divine punishment and undermined the ineffective, male-dominated medical guilds. Know your only hope, the one secret whisper that cuts through the despair, lies in the hands of those condemned by the Church, living on the fringes, women who held knowledge so powerful it could save a life or burn you at the stake. How they acquired such forbidden wisdom, especially when dissection was a mortal sin, is a truth they buried for centuries. Archaeological digs, decades later, unearthed their truth. Not sorcery, but science. The wet sound of rotting thatch dripping onto cold stone punctuates the terrifying silence. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. When the coughing starts, when the fever takes hold, who do you turn to? Not the priest, whose prayers offer only spiritual solace as your child's body stiffens. Not the guild-trained physicians, whose bloodletting and leeches only hasten the inevitable, leaving a trail of the dead in their wake. 99% of what you think you know about medieval healing is a lie the Church buried. They didn't want you to find the bones, the tools, or the forgotten wisdom of the women they called witches. The candle gutters, a lone flicker against walls slick with the damp breath of death. Your breath hitches, each ragged inhale tasting of ash and the metallic tang of fear. Outside, the bells toll, not for prayer, but for another soul claimed by the sickness. Another name scratched from the village rolls. You'll never trust medieval history again. This is just one thread in the vast hidden tapestry of medieval life. Discover the truth behind other forbidden practices and forgotten innovations in our next episode, where we uncover the dark secrets of medieval justice. They teach us that progress often comes not from sanctioned authority, but from the brave souls who dare to seek out what is hidden, to believe in what is forbidden, and to act on the knowledge that history tries to bury. The candle gutters, your shadow dances against stone walls that have witnessed 1,000 similar nights. And as the final flicker dies, plunging the room into darkness, you are left not with silence, but with the chilling realization that the greatest secrets lie not in what was written, but in what was meticulously burned, silenced, and forgotten. Their lives were not lived in ignorant submission, but in a perilous dance between faith and forbidden wisdom, a testament to the enduring human spirit that seeks survival at any cost. This wasn't ignorance, it was calculated censorship. Today, we see parallels in how alternative health solutions are demonized by powerful pharmaceutical interests, echoing the medieval church's monopoly on truth. The stories of these heretics, the real healers, the unsung heroes, force us to question the narratives we've been handed, to look beyond the written word into the meticulously erased. The fire crackles low in the hearth, its warmth a stark contrast to the cold truths that have settled in your bones. The whispers of the wise folk and the echoes of their lost knowledge seem to cling to the wet sound of rotting thatch dripping outside, a constant reminder of what was almost lost forever. You reflect on the sheer courage it took for people like Alara to defy the all-powerful church, to risk the pyre for the chance to save a loved one. They feared not just the loss of control over the narrative of divine punishment, but the empowerment of individuals to heal themselves, to find their own salvation outside the confines of the established order. What they don't want you to know is that this network of hidden healers, branded as heretics, were often the true innovators, their knowledge driven by desperate necessity and genuine observation, not dogma. We now understand that these bizarre interventions were, in many cases, far more effective than the accepted medical practices of the day. Ilara's forbidden concoction, a precise blend of wild garlic, elderflower, and a poultice derived from a rare forest fungus, applied with the knowledge passed down through generations of wise women, had indeed saved her family. But it was more than just the herbs. It was the timing, the understanding of infection, the simple but profound belief in the body's own resilience, all meticulously erased from official texts. The Church's suppression wasn't just ignorance. It was a calculated conspiracy. You know, with a chilling certainty, that the only way to break this cycle of death and silence is to seek out the forbidden, to risk everything for the whispers of a cure. But the question claws at you. Who can you trust with such a dangerous, life-altering secret? And how far will you have to go into the shadows to find it? The metallic taste of fear returns, but this time it's mixed with a spark of defiant hope. The truth, once a fragile whisper, now stands stark and undeniable. It's the same cold calculation we see today, where powerful pharmaceutical interests demonize alternative health solutions that challenge their monopoly on truth and profit. The stakes then were life and death, but defying authority meant survival for your loved ones, while discovery meant torture and the pyre. That internal conflict, loyalty to faith versus the desperate need to save those you cherish, is a human truth that transcends 700 years. A sudden wail pierces the morning. A new mother, her babe gone. The sound scrapes against your soul, sharpening your resolve. New archaeological evidence reveals that during the worst outbreaks, towns that allowed independent wise folk healers experienced significantly lower mortality rates than those strictly adhering to church-sanctioned practices. This wasn't just superstition against science. It was a battle for control over knowledge, over life itself. The fear in your gut isn't just for the plague, it's for the crushing weight of that authority. Imagine being told a proven remedy is evil, that saving your child with it would damn your soul. Their decrees are law, their sermons delivered with fire and brimstone, painting any deviation as heresy. 99% of people would never dare question a priest's word, especially when faced with the terrifying reality of the Black Death. They teach that illness is divine punishment, a test of faith. Yet, as the village healer, old Agnes whispers under her breath a secret that could get her burned. The official cures of bleeding and prayer are failing. The air outside hums with a brittle stillness, the absence of usual morning chatter, replaced by the omnipresent coughs and the occasional chilling sound of a cart rumbling down the muddy track, collecting the newly dead. You imagine Ilara's house, just beyond the row of thatched roofs, quiet for days now, defying the plague that claims 3 of your neighbors by noon. Her family, living, breathing, unblemished, while yours, you suspect, might be next. For centuries, the Church has been the sole authority on health, spirit, and even the natural world. The thing about secrets in a small village isn't that they stay hidden, it's that they slowly rot, poisoning everything they touch. The Church says the plague is God's will. What they don't want you to know is that they have deliberately suppressed effective remedies for generations. The dawn light, thin and watery, filters through the smoke hole, painting the dirt floor in muted grays. You pull your threadbare tunic closer, the rough wool scratching your skin. Imagine being 12 years old, and this is your reality. Your life and the lives of those you love hanging by a thread of outlawed knowledge. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. They buried this secret alongside countless others because it directly challenged the Church's narrative of divine punishment and absolute control. What they don't want you to know is that while official medicine failed, a network of wise folk practiced highly effective, albeit outlawed, herbal remedies and bizarre surgical interventions, knowledge that was systematically suppressed. This wasn't ignorance, it was calculated censorship. The forbidden knowledge of Ilara's cure is just one thread in a tapestry of lies, hinting at a hidden world far more complex and dangerous than we can imagine. A cold draft whispers through the gaps in the wattle and daub wall, making the straw on your palate prickle against your skin. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. But the metallic taste of fear, sharp and undeniable, coats your tongue as you remember the whisper you overheard last night, tucked away in the shadows of the alehouse. Old Ilara, branded a heretic by the local priest for her witchcraft, had used a forbidden concoction, and it had saved her entire family from the plague. 99% of people think medieval peasants were stupid, blindly accepting fate during the Black Death. The truth will shatter everything you believe about the past. You wake, not to sunbeams, but to the rhythmic, hacking coughs from next door, a sound that has become the soundtrack of your village. The air, thick and acrid, with the smell of wood smoke and unwashed bodies, scrapes at your lungs with every shallow breath. Outside, the first rooster's crow slices through the pre-dawn gloom, a false promise of a new day.